This is black gold, and it's like a nutrient-dense superfood for your garden and houseplants. But it's expensive to buy, and making it at home can be a little bit messy and sometimes tricky, but it doesn't have to be. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make a fully insulated outdoor compost bin for under $15. And make sure you watch to the end because there's a secret ingredient that will give you compost 3 times faster. Using an old laundry basket, barrel, or bucket, you can produce black gold year-round with the technique I'm about to show you. So let's go find a spot. If we build these bins correctly, our compost will keep warm in the winter cold and cool in the summer heat. Now we need to dig a hole for our container. You can either dig half the height of your container and use the soil from the hole to fill around and insulate the top half of your container, or dig all the way down. Since I live in a colder climate, zone 6B, I'm gonna bury mine completely. You can look up where the frost line is at in your area to see how deep you need to go. And if you live in an extremely hot area, you'll need to go deeper as well. I'm going to be putting insulated lids on these bins. But even with that, I doubt this 5-gallon bucket's gonna keep from freezing. It's just not deep enough, but I'll put it to use in the spring. Now that we have our holes dug, let's go inside and prep our containers to be buried. I'm using a 3/8 drill bit to put several drainage holes on the bottom of my bucket. The laundry basket that I'm gonna use has holes that are too big. If I don't cover them, it'll fill with dirt when I'm trying to bury it. So I'm gonna use this cardboard and compostable cling wrap. Now that we have our containers prepped, let's get them buried and insulated. Make sure you fill the voids between the container with tightly packed soil, leaving no air pockets. I'm going to use some scrap wood and insulation I have laying around to make a lid. Your lid could be as simple as a foam insulation board with a rock on top to hold it down, or as fancy as you want to make it. The only important thing is there's enough insulation to keep the heat in and keep your compost from freezing. Composting is such a magical process, and ever since I watched The Lion King as a kid and learned about the great circle of life, I've been fascinated by it. It always amazes me how Mother Nature can turn all these rotten things into something so useful so quickly. I plan on doing a video update later on next year on if this project was a success or failure. So if you don't want to miss that, make sure you subscribe. And if you'd like me to do a video in the near future about hot composting or vermicomposting, let me know in the comments. All we have left to do now is to place our lid and put together our first composting recipe. At the beginning of this video, I promised you a secret ingredient to help you compost faster. I'll get to that in a second, but first I'm going to add some shredded paper and old apples and potatoes to this bucket. Our next ingredient will need a good starting environment before we start adding our garden waste and other materials. If you haven't guessed already, the secret ingredient is red wiggler worms. These little guys can eat 1/4 to half their weight in a day, producing that black gold you saw in the beginning. Worm castings will enrich your soil and boost your plant growth while making them more resistant to disease. I've been producing my own worm castings indoors for several years now. I'll share what I've found as best practices for keeping an indoor bin later, but until then I hope this outdoor bin keeps my red wigglers from freezing.